Welcome to the CEO of Destiny podcast, where you will find the tools to fulfill the purpose of your generation and wildly succeed in the marketplace. And now your host, Andre J. Benjamin.
How do you manage priorities and manage energy and manage time? And I broke it up like that specifically on purpose because people try to give that general time management, but no, how are you managing your priorities? How are you managing your energy? And then how are you managing the actual time?
Absolutely. Well, that's always changing. That is
Absolutely.
just, that is a moving target in my life. I think because my husband and I did make the decision for me to be home with our kids, like while they were tiny, he's also an entrepreneur and has his own business. And in that kind of marriage relationship, we tend to use the words like teamwork kinds of words, because we really do feel like we're a team. We know neither one of us can do what we do without the other person. And I am so grateful for a husband who recognizes that and is very cognizant that we both have different roles that have to be fulfilled. And sometimes we fill in the gaps for each other, and that's really great. But I would say what I'm kind of recognizing is that I always want, because the way we've prioritized our world, and also we don't live super close to any of our families. So we don't have grandparents who can grab kids after school. Now, that being said, I have a great friend group. I mean, even today, as I'm recording this, I know I have to go pick up my husband from an airport, and I've outsourced 2 kids with friends after school so they can make it to their activities, and stuff like that has to happen. But if somebody gets sick, I'm going to be the one who shows up at the school to pick up the puking kid, because that's just where it's at. So that is always has to be my highest priority. For me, with art stuff, I've started to realize that there are some things that it doesn't matter who does it as long as it gets done. And that has been very freeing as a mom to be like, it doesn't matter who scrubs the toilets at my house, so long as they're vaguely clean regularly. And for me to be able to be like, oh, hold on. So I have this friend, Chrissy, and she has a house cleaning business, and I can sell X number of earrings so that Chrissy can clean my house. And I have a sweet husband who's like, babe, I don't even care if it's a wash. If you're happier doing your thing and we're supporting her doing her thing, let's do that. And so looking for those kind of interesting ways to outsource different things. I have somebody who brings a meal into us once a week, but I pay her for that. I have the gal who cleans my house every 2 weeks. And honestly, some of those things came out of my business coaching class, that she was like, hey, you're spinning all the plates. What do you want to drop? And so I wrote down a lot of things well, what would it cost for somebody to do my laundry? Ooh, a lot of money, because there's a lot of people in this house. Guess I'm going to have to still do laundry. So I have tried to kind of, as the kids, I'm still kind of finagling all my days because the kids are just now back in school, and that's kind of shifting. Trying to kind of block out my time for different things. And so to be able to be like, okay, on Mondays, if I have blocked out that that's the day I'm pulling the house back together, making the meal plans, making sure we have food, then I can do all that by itself. And then I can move on to, if I can block out a whole day that I can work, I try and work very strategically. And so while I might have customs on my plate and also have ideas that I want to kick out, and I need to update the website and refill stores, I have this big magnet board, and I use these tiny little magnets, and I write down all my projects, and each project gets a magnet. And then I group all of those magnets. This is so nerdy. I group all those magnets based on what processes they take. So if I'm going to have to cut stones for you, that has a symbol. So all the stone cutting things are together. So if I'm kicking on my rock machine, I'm busting all that out at once. If I am doing an etching thing and I'm going to have to get out that chemical, I have all those listed together. I know I'm knocking all those out today. And so I try and kind of move through like that. I have a custom inquiry form on my website that I've started pushing people to help me be more organized with things, that it asks the first 6 or 7 questions that I would be asking if we were having this conversation face to face or via text or whatever. But it's also taking their answers, and it's a fabulous Google form, and it drops them all into a spreadsheet for me. So I have that. And one of the questions I always ask is, what's your deadline on this? Because I often have people who are like, oh, I don't know, I've just wanted a mother's ring for forever. So really, truly, whenever you have time, that'd be great.
Wow.
And then I can put that with the mother's ring that's due September 10th, and I can do them all then. And so kind of trying to group like things has been very helpful for me. And then also having to look ahead, because I do have to have like physical products to be able to move on in the next week. So one of my goals for every Friday is to look at my list, look at my materials. Do I need to order silver before I start? And that gives me enough time. Usually I know that my deliveries will come on Tuesday morning, which is great because on Mondays I'm taking care of the house. And so kind of just trying to make a list of all the things that I have to do and group them accordingly, because there's always things that take more time one place or another. And part of that is that I set limits on my social media. And so I have time. And so it's like, if I only have 30 minutes to get all my mess done on social media, then that only becomes my business time. And then I'm not like scrolling through your vacation photos, which I'm sure are beautiful and lovely, but you're still going to be my friend if I don't like all 50 of them. So
when you talked about, there's so much that you said there. Okay, so then how do you manage energy? Because energy management is super important. And there are certain things that cause for us to create energy. We can get into that zone, as they call it, flow state, where we're, you lose track of time because you're just in that place and whoa, but then there's other things that are drainers, the things that we're not as strong at that might deplete us. How do you manage knowing that I love how you said you set those boundaries and those borders on your time by, I set limits on social media. I do this. I hire out time. I find a particular who that can handle the how of, this meal or the cleaning of the house. That is a huge management and like wisdom principle. Now talk about the actual energy of, and even relationships, and you don't have to say names, obviously, but if there's, sometimes people who reach out to you require more energy. You see it on your phone and you say, that's going to take quite a lot of time that I don't have right now. So then there's other people you look at and you say, this person actually creates energy for me. Let me answer this phone and let me take this because I know they've always got something that sparks me and stirs me. So talk about energy management a little.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think first of all, like you can't manage your energy if you aren't aware that your energy is a depletable thing, right? Like if you don't understand that there are things like you were just saying that are life-giving and things that are life-sucking, like then you just constantly are in a state of different emotions and not being able to have the intelligence to say, well, what put me here? How did I get here? And so I think, there's a lot of hate that we can all toss at 2020 in general, but I think for the most part, we could agree that it forced everyone to slow down. And I think, I don't know about you, but like that first, those 2 weeks, and it's like, okay, everybody's just going to lay low for a minute. I was like, man, I could probably do that for a couple more weeks. Like, let's. And my girlfriends and I always joke that we were like, what would this have been like if this happened when we were like single, like, or if we were just married and didn't have babies? Like, man, this would be like. And so, yeah. But anyhow, so I think that like made me a lot more aware of like the need for like rest in particular. And so I'd read a book and a study during that time. One was called like Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. And there's like a whole chunk in there about like Sabbath, and wherever you are on the scale of scripture and all things in that category, I think everyone can understand just the need for rest. And the idea of scheduling rest into your routine is just so important. And one of the things, I love like stories I learned from those, but one of the things, and I think it was in that book that they talked about, was during like the Oregon Trail, when all of these covered wagons are like pushing to try and get to the coast before the winter sets in, and they were slowing down. They weren't sure they were going to make it. And so they like circle up this whole band and they're like, okay, what are we going to do? And they've been resting every seventh day. And half of them wanted to continue to do that. And half of them said, no, deuces, we're rolling. Like, we're going to make it. And so they split, and the group of people who chose to rest still beat them to Oregon, beat the other people to Oregon, because what they had found was that they were pushing their oxen too hard. So they were, losing oxen, they were losing wheels. They weren't having that built-in time to, catch their breath, and just how important that is. And I have found that that is so valuable for me, that there's a lot of physical work that happens with what I do. And I am far less likely to make mistakes when I'm sharp. And if I push through and I'm in an emotionally not great spot, or even just a tired spot where my energy's low, it's not smart for me to move in on a piece, especially a custom piece that has to move a certain direction. Because if I melt that bezel, or, and things go wrong. Yesterday alone, I melted 2 rings and stepped in a steaming pile of dog poop, because there's puppies that sometimes hang out with me. And I was like, well, I'm over today. And so just to be able to step back in those moments and be like, okay, I could cut all fresh metal and storm through this with a bad attitude and try and do it again. But if I melt both of these rings for a second time, my kids are not going to be excited about the mom they come home to. So I sometimes have to know, like, okay, you got to just step away. And so I stepped away, I drove to town, and I got a drink, and I ate some food, and I sat there and I thought, do I need a nap? Because sometimes I just think a nap is necessary when you're cranky. And, and I thought,
and all the parents that understand the children that fight naps, when there's adults that say, could I have a nap?
Can I take a nap? Should I take a nap? And I thought, after I'd stepped away, then I was like, okay, I feel good about this. I can go back, but I'm not going to work on those rings today. Those rings have already been a lot for me today. So I'm going to move on down the line and work on a couple other projects that I knew I could get done. So kind of just, I think there's always just that mental check. And like you said, of being like, ooh, do I have to answer this? And I think in business, I think in all areas of life, really, we're a little too accessible. There's some wonderful, wonderful things to the accessibility that we have with technology. I mean, you and I would never be having this conversation. And, we had kind of our pre-conversation on the phone, and I had a really tiring week. And I was telling my husband later about our chat, and I was like, it was just so life-giving to be like, oh man, here's somebody that's kind of pulling the same way. And I felt like you were just so encouraging, and I had just so loved that. But on the flip side of that is that we have this mentality that if somebody reaches out to me, I have to answer right now. And that I have to hear all of the opinions of all of the people. And I especially want young people to hear that if you wouldn't let 50 people march into your bedroom and tell you their opinion of what you did today, then do not lay in your bed that night and scroll through it and read it. Do not feel like you have to respond to how somebody felt about the fact that you don't look good in red. Who cares? You liked it. You wore it. You put it out there. Move on. And so I think that's really hard to do, hard to understand where those lines are and boundaries, because we are so quick to hear the ping, pick up our phone, read it, and sometimes even not responding. Sometimes just opening it up and reading it can be a huge energy suck, and that's terrible. And then, I did have a situation where someone sent me this message on Instagram, and she had seen some of my work and felt like it looked similar to her work, which as an artist is a really you're like, oh my gosh, is this, what did I do? And so I was walking, we had a great back and forth, really. And I sent it to several of my friends, because that's what you do, right? You just step back to junior high girl mode. Am I seeing this? Am I doing this right? Did I mess this up? And, and I just literally felt sick to my stomach. This is dumb. It was my favorite day of the year here. We burn all of our grass out here.
Nice.
And we just set these huge fires. It's amazing. And it's safe for the environment. So I just don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Look it up. It's how we preserve the Flint Hills, or it would be taken over by random trees that are not indigenous. So it's really a good thing. But anyhow, it's so fun. So we light these huge fires. My husband and I will put the kids to bed early, and then we go out and set things on fire. It's my favorite. And so we were he was getting all the supplies. This pings in. I open it. Why did I open it? I don't know. And it's this message, and it just felt like a gut punch, and it just like ruined my whole day. And like and really that whole week I just felt sick about it, and responded, and it ended up being fine. But man, you just that's just such a dangerous territory to not have like some amount of guards on things that are like a time stuck. And ultimately, like, I feel like if you treat people well, it's not going to really matter if it took you a day to respond or 2 minutes to respond. Like, if you handle it well, and a lot of times I think handling it well means giving yourself some space. Like, if you're burned out, and then I all of a sudden made a promise to somebody that I could get something done, but I forgot because I was doing something else at the same time. If I sit down and I'm intentional with my time and energy, that goes a lot further. And sometimes that actually means slowing down, which is not just not common.
Huge dot connectors right there, and so much. When you talked about that of guarding the guardrails around your time and around your energy and some of the things you've learned, reflective, can you talk as well about how you chose your association? So there.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do us a favor. If this was useful in any way for you, please go to iTunes and leave us a review. Reviews will allow others to easily discover the podcast. If you'd like more information and to receive a free download, Rediscover Your Destiny, go to ceoofdestiny.com. Thanks again, and tune in next time.